Hi guys, and welcome to week 6. I wanted to go over kind of what I'm looking for your module 3. I did get to grade all of your module 2s. I'm trying as best I can to get through the entire grade book, so please bear with me. But take a look at any comments that I have made, any suggestions. Feel free to redo it. Again, any assignment from week 4 and prior, you can resubmit by December 1st at midnight, and I will look at it for a grade. Unfortunately, after that point, I will not be able to relook at anything, and you'll be kind of finalized with the grade that you have. So, for this module and this week, we're looking at texture mapping. All right, we're going to create them in Mudbox with your high detailed, highly, rendered texture Mudbox model, and then we're going to place them back on your low poly model. This is really standard in the industry, and it helps to have, a low poly model appear to be high res, but keep the low poly count so that when you're in game, you don't have to spend a lot of time on the loading screen. So I have this model just from a book, a Mudbox book that I have, and we can see that I have my low poly model here in Maya, and then I've got my high poly, added detail, added texture version in Mudbox. And we're going to actually render out these textures. Okay. Now, if you look at your assignment sheet, the guidelines and rubric for this assignment, it looks really intense, and I do want to simplify it a bit. A UV layout is generally how we can see all of the color layers of a model, and you can Google it. We can get some really cool layouts, but that's something that we do in 3ds Max or in Maya, and then you bring into Photoshop and you create that way. So with this, I'm not going to be looking at that section. We're going to be looking at all of the other ones. If you would like to know how to do a UV layout and export and use Photoshop and all of that, I'd be happy to go over it, but I don't think it's as important as the rest of the assignment. And you will learn it in future texture classes. With these ones, we want to pay attention to making our texture maps in Mudbox, using the stencils, applying your own stencils, painting, hand painting, bringing in photos. And then we're going to look at the diffuse, normal, and specular maps. Feel free to do more than just these 3, but I will be looking and requiring that these 3 are there. You're going to export your texture files and put them back on your low poly original version in Maya or 3ds Max. All right, so my other video, we went over kind of how to paint in the diffuse, and that you can actually have multiple channels. I only did one, just my base diffuse layer, and painted on that. It's kind of a more simplified version, but you can feel free to do as many as you want. I want to go over that you can actually see this as an unflattened version. So if we go to UVs and maps, notice that there's flattened to UV space, and also notice that there's unflattened to bring it back. But what we can do is, it's got real tiny, but here we go. So this is actually my image flattened, and when you do hit that flattened, if you don't see anything, it's okay. It might just be turned to the side like this, so you need to rotate around. And you can see this is actually how my object would be unwrapped. Again, think about this as wrapping paper that we've completely put around our mesh. If we are one of those really neatly unwrappers, which I am not, I rip through the paper, but if you nicely unwrapped everything, this is what our paper would be and how it would be cut out to fit around our object. You can do Alt-T, T as in tiger, to toggle between your flattened and unflattened version, or again, UV and maps, flatten and unflatten. All right, so Just another way to look at it. If you are kind of struggling to be able to paint in a 3D view, you can paint in a 2D view that way. All right, so we've got our diffuse map here. And once we are all done, we can export this here, or we can go to UVs and maps, and then extract texture maps, and then new operation. So this is when I can say if I want to do a normal map, ambient occlusion. We haven't talked about all of these, and nor will you need to be doing all of these. But I just want you to know that this is an option for how we can export, our normal map, displacement map, etc. There's always, 15 different ways to do the same thing. I just want you to be aware of different options. What we can also do is right mouse click on our diffuse, and then if you look down here, we can export channel merge. And the reason why we have merged is because we have the 3 different versions here. It's going to by default go into your Mudbox folder. I'm just going to put this on the desktop for the sake of my organization for this video, but I would call this diffuse, and then maybe whatever the name is. You can check the file type. We can have different options here. I'm just going to deal with PNG 8-bit for now. Hit save. You can see down here it's saving textures. And then you're going to have your file saved to your desktop or wherever you put it. I'll show you in a second how to bring in your diffuse map. Our normal map is going to show kind of the bump that we've created with our, let me make this brush a little bit smaller. So for a normal map, that's when we're going to use this UVs and maps, extract texture map, new operation. I'm going to do a normal through here. So you can see exactly what's going to happen. We have the base model that we created kind of in Maya or Max, our source model, aka what we sculpted and added detail to, and what the normal map is kind of showing all that detail, all the wrinkles, any bumps, any highs and lows on our mesh. Now, it's saying, what's our target model? What are we hoping to put this texture on? Well, I'm hoping to put it on the level 0, aka the base mesh from Max and Maya, but I want to actually have the texture look like it's the level 5. That's how many subdivision levels I've added. You can change this, but I would leave, I want to see all the detail, and we're definitely putting it on level 0. You can smooth out the target models. You can look at all the options we have down here. Make sure that you're looking at the normal map output. Maya and Softimage actually reverse the normals from 3ds Max. So just make sure to select whatever software you're dealing with. We want to deal in tangent space, 8-bit texture, and then again, I'm going to do to my desktop. We'll do normal, hammer. Save, and then we can do extract. This one gives you an extraction window, and then you can see down here how fast it's going, and then it'll give you some visual and audio cues. There we go. Extraction finished. Okay. So then we can close this. You can see we've got our normal map here, our diffuse map. Now the last one we're missing is a specular map for the requirements. And again, please feel free to do more than just these base requirements. I can add a new map. This one's going to be my specular map. Make sure again to change it to specular. And again, we can add all these other ones as well. I'm going to hit OK. So now I'm in my specular map. I have it up to 100. Let's zoom in here. Now, what we can do is using the paintbrush or any of the brush tools that we've discussed previously, I can actually paint to add specularity. Now with specularity, we want to keep to the left side of the square. White is going to be very specular or shiny, black is going to be not. So you can see if I grab a white brush and I start painting, I'm getting a nice highlight. Okay? Again, you can play around with the levels, where you want them to be, how reflective you want them to be or not. This could be something that maybe you just want one portion of your object to look specular. You know, you can deal with one kind of face at a time, or maybe I just want the top of the hammer to be reflective and not the handle, whatever you would like. You'll take a little bit more time than that, I hope, but I'll do export channel merged. You can export to a Photoshop file. Let me just, these ones, export channel to PSD. What that does is if you have separate layers, it allows you to use those separate layers and kind of edit them separately in Photoshop. It'll have, you know, if I have handle, rest, and map 6, when I bring it into Photoshop, it will have these 3 as layers so I can edit them separately. So kind of cool. But for the sake of what we're doing, I only need to save it to import back into Maya. All right, so you'll be needing to turn in those 3 maps that I have onto the desktop, and now I'll show you what to do to bring it in to Maya or 3ds Max. Just so you guys can see what kind of my images are going to look like, your normal map is generally going to be this shade of blue, purple with some extra color tones. That tells us kind of how to bump and where we're having those details. Then we've got the diffuse, aka the color, what kind of texture I have used on there. And this is kind of the UV layout. Again, your assignment didn't want negative space, but this is working well. They're all lined up next to each other. And then our specular, just showing a little bit of highlight. And again, the specular takes into account a grayscale to determine how much shine should be there. All right, so if you're in 3ds Max, you're going to create a texture the same way. You can use a blend if you know you've got some shine. Lambert is more of a matte material. And then you're just going to import these into, the normals are going to be into a normal bump. And then you've got your specular. They all match up to where they're going to go. So I'm going to right mouse click and hold on my object, assign new material. I'm just going to do, actually I'm going to do a blend. So I'll do blend. Blend 1, I'm going to name this hammer. No matter what software you're in, make sure that you're naming. Color, and you're in 3ds Max, it's your diffuse. I'm going to grab a file. In 3ds Max, it's a bitmap. And then I'm just going to find my images. Open. Hit 6 on your keyboard to show your textures. And again, these are my base textures. And then I'm going to need to go back into my texture tab. And then now we want to go into bump mapping so that I can add my normal map. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to do a file. Now the important thing here is that I want to use this as a tangent space normal. Remember, we selected tangent in Mudbox. And then bump value is where I'm going to import my actual file. Normal map. Okay, and it might be hard to tell at first if this is actually working, but you can see I've got some detail here. The rust is updated. And then last but not least, we need, what do we do? Our specular. For this one, you got to scroll down into specular shading. To put a specular map in, you need to use a blend. A Lambert won't have your specular. Specular color, file, and grab our spec. All right, now we can do a little render preview to see what's going on. We've added that detail from Mudbox. Again, my specular map is looking a little bit janky because I didn't take some time to make it look real. But any sort of details that you add, you'll be able to see. We can see I've got the detail on the side where this is looking like it's been used. So what you'll do is you'll need to submit, again, those files and then your FBX so that I can put it back together for grading. I hope this video helps out. Again, let me know if you have any questions on previous projects, future projects, or anything that I can help out with. Thanks.